Bianca Gillam is a special sales assistant,
Assistant, yeah.
okay, with Simon and Schuster in the UK. Welcome to the Bibliophile.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So let's start off with why you love books.
Wow, that's a big question. So I've always been a huge reader. I was the kid that my parents had to drag out the car to parties because I would be sat with my face buried in a book. So I've always really, really loved reading and really loved books, all different kinds of books, from kind of commercial fiction. I read a lot of young adult fiction when I was younger, but then I would also be reading Jane Austen at the same time. So I've always been really passionate about that. So when it came to thinking about what I wanted to do, I knew for sure that I just wanted to work for a company that produced something that I was really passionate about. I didn't feel comfortable working somewhere where it wasn't towards an end that I was excited about. I'm actually quite different to some of my friends in that, who are more focused on kind of the day to day. So long as they're happy with what their actual role is, they don't mind too much about the wider company they work for. But for me, I was like, I would just, my soul would leave my body within a few months working for, say, an investment bank or something like that, because I just wouldn't be excited about it. So I landed on publishing. I haven't fully answered your question there. I love books because I think that we have so many different kinds of books out in the market at the moment, and it's a really increasingly accessible thing for everyone. And I think you can get a really good window into kind of different kinds of humanity through reading people's stories, and it can make you more empathetic as a person. It can teach kids how to treat each other. Some of our children's books have some messages that are just really profound about kindness, things as basic as being nice to each other, which I don't think you can get from staring at a screen. You know, they can be funny. There's such a wonderful way to learn about life, I think, and learn about people.
And how do you feel about the physical object, the book as physical object versus an ebook?
I was thinking about this today, actually, because I'm currently reading an ebook version of Cider with Rosie by Laurie Lee. And it's a weird experience because I think it's quite an atmospheric book generally, but I always find when I read an ebook that it almost feels like a fever dream. Like it feels like it didn't happen. Because when I read a physical book and I finish it, even if it was really immersive and I kind of come out of it and I'm like, wow, and I need a couple days to process, I can at least look at the physical thing and look at the number of pages and think, I read that. But with an ebook, it feels like it kind of just disappears into the ether after you've read it. It's really strange. But I do like that you can highlight passages. So I read on my iPad. So particularly with this book I'm reading, Cider with Rosie, some of the writing is so beautiful. And I just want to highlight a whole paragraph. I would feel bad doing that to a physical book, although I do annotate books sometimes. But on my iPad, I can just highlight it all and then come back to it, which is quite cool. So yeah, I'm ambivalent, I'd say.
Okay, so you're not. Well, I'm a lot older than you. I suppose that's part of it. You talk about kind of a fever dream when you read electronically. That's how I feel. I can't get a sense of exactly where I am in the book, it seems. I like the stability of a physical object so that I can place myself in it. I can flip back and forth. I guess the ebook is only going to get better with technology as it improves. But for me, it's plus I'm a huge collector too. So the object is very important to me. Do you collect at all, or is that just not a part of your?
I do, yeah. So I feel that I've kind of cursed myself a bit. I call it the curse of the signed edition because I've bought 2 books recently that were signed and were by authors that I really like. So I just trusted that it was going to be good and that I should just get the signed copy and then read it. And I hated both.
Oh no.
They sit on my shelf taunting me for my trust in knowing that this was going to be a good book that I was going to enjoy. So I have collected, and I've been kind of put off it a bit now. I'm like, my new rule is that I have to have read the book and enjoyed it before I buy a special edition. I'll just have to keep it for long enough that it becomes a covetable first edition.
That's right. Okay, so did you go to university and study English? Is that what you did?
So I didn't actually study English. I went to Oxford and I studied classics, so ancient history, Latin, and ancient Greek. So it's adjacent to English, I would say, but not necessarily the traditional degree that people tend to study before going into publishing.
How easy was it for you to get a job in publishing?
Not very easy. I think this is quite a common sentiment about that people share when they're trying to get into publishing, particularly at the moment with the job market being what it is. It is a hard industry to break into. I think you have to have time, and you have to be quite tough and resilient to rejections, and be really focused on where you want to end up. So I kind of went in quite blind, I think, initially, and thought, I've graduated, I'll just start applying to jobs and I'm sure I'll land something within a couple of months. I anticipated it would be the same as, my friends who've gone into other industries who found jobs quite quickly. And that was not the case. It was a good few months of hard graft, and I had to do some work experience. I had to do an internship. I had to kind of work my way up the ladder, I guess, before landing my first permanent job. So it was quite tough. It's been worth it though, so far.
So how long have you been at it then with Simon & Schuster?
I started with Simon & Schuster in February. So I had about a month in the office before we all transitioned to working from home during the pandemic. So about 8 months now, 9 months maybe.
Okay. You know all about special sales then?
I think I'm still learning. So I would say I definitely know a lot more than I did when I started. But yeah, it's definitely an area I would say I'm more knowledgeable about working in it than kind of many other people who are, even some people in the publishing industry aren't 100% sure what it is. So
right. And okay, so let's start with what it isn't. What don't you do then when in sales?
If you think about the traditional trade channels for where you will see books, where people will tend to buy books, bookshops, the obvious one. So you have places like Phil's and Waterstones, and then independent bookshops. And there are supermarkets, so Tesco, Sainsbury's, they will have books. Actually getting a book into a slot in a supermarket is really big usually for us, because it will result in a huge amount of sales. And then you have places like WH Smith and WH Smith Travel, where you might pick up a book in an airport on your way to a flight. So that's all what I don't do. So I don't sell to bookshops, into supermarkets. I sell into places that you maybe wouldn't expect to find a book. You might go in looking for something else and then see a book and pick it up. So one of my big accounts is Urban Outfitters, which is, as you probably know, a kind of mostly clothing store for teenagers, which I've slightly outgrown now, but used to really like. And they have tables upstairs which have lots of different books on them. And part of my job is selecting books that I think they'll like from our selection and selling into them. But I don't do the more mainstream trade side of things.
Let's look at that. I'm going to go through this article that you sent me by Brian Judd. Mm-hmm. So Urban Outfitters would fall into the specialty stores category?
Yeah, I think so. They kind of sit between gift and specialty stores. Yeah, Urban Outfitters, places like Anthropology would probably sit in that category as well. I also do some work with them. Tokyo Toys are a brand that I work with. So they're a comic book store in Glasgow. Simon & Schuster, we sell our own titles, but we also have a big client publishing side to what we do. So we represent a number of other publishers as a sales department, as a sales team. I'm responsible for selling in whatever they publish as well. So we work with Viz Media. They're a big comic book publisher and manga publisher. I have a lot of clients who will buy those from me, and Tokyo Toys is one of them. So that's a kind of more specialist store as well.
Okay, and other examples would include a home improvement center, pet shop, auto supply stores, camera shop, business supply stores. So, okay, take me through what you do with Urban Outfitters then. You've got like how many books does Simon and Schuster first of all have on its back list and then on its front list?
Ooh, I mean, we have a lot of books that we sell into Urban Outfitters. There are some titles that they come back for again and again that are from our backlist, and then they have some that come from our front list.
But it's your job to fine tune that, right?
Yeah, basically. So I will be responsible for monitoring stock of the titles that they are ordering from us on a regular basis, but also keeping them updated on things that we have coming up that I think will be a good fit for them. So, for example, we've recently had some poetry books published that I thought would be a good fit for them. One of them was by Lana Del Rey. It's called Violet Bent Backwards Over the Grass, and it's a good fit for them, I think, because it's got a really beautiful cover, and they're probably going to be selling some of her music as well. So it'll be the kind of thing that I think would fit really well into their stores. So I'll send that to them along with some information about the book, and then they'll see whether or not they want to add it to their selection for the upcoming months and give me a prediction of kind of how many they think they want to buy.
So how many typically would they buy of a new book like that?
I've been advised that I shouldn't share too much sales data, but as an estimate, it can range anywhere between 500 and a few thousand. Sometimes we'll ask for a particular commitment and maybe do something with the discount if they're committing to buying more books, but it tends to vary. I think sometimes they will go in with an order, and then they'll see how the book sells and maybe come up with a reorder after a couple of months.
So how many outlets do they have?
That's a question I don't know the answer to, actually. I would say a fair few, probably. It's quite a popular store across the UK, but I can't make a guess off the top of my head.
Okay. I guess you'd also want to know where they sell the most books. What stores sell the most books too, right?
Yeah, I mean,
locations.
This is something that's been interesting as well. I've seen a lot of movement towards online sales in the times that we're in at the moment, when things are kind of locking down and then reopening. The distribution of orders has been slightly different based on whether or not we're in a lockdown currently. But yeah, it is interesting to see where things are selling and where they're being distributed. But that's not necessarily always information that they will share with me. It's something that I'll kind of guess at.
Because I mean, the different markets are going to be interested in different books, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something which I see more amongst. So I also represent our subscription box customers, which is a big area of what I do. And that's something where the market will really vary. And it's not necessarily based on location, but it'll be based on clientele that they're aiming at. So, I mean, for a bit of context, the subscription box is a service whereby you will subscribe and they will send you a book every month. And they'll have a different theme sometimes. They'll have different things they do. I have one customer who send out chocolates with their books, which is a very simple yet genius idea, I think. And then I have other customers who are far more specialized, and they'll be looking at more of a young adult audience and trying to do some real special editions for them to kind of be collectibles. So that's, I think, probably where I see the most variation.
Subscription box, can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, I can describe it a bit more. So subscription boxes are like a separate customer base that I have, and they're all based entirely online, and they do mail outs. So they will curate a box of gifts with a book, or just with a book and with something simple alongside it like chocolate, depending on their price point, which varies quite a lot. And they will send it out to you each month. And I think the idea behind it is that, particularly in times like these where people can't browse in bookshops, or even when we're not in the midst of a pandemic, sometimes people want to take kind of the browsing out of it and have people select books on their behalf. They maybe don't have time to go and spend an hour on Amazon or Waterstones.com kind of scrolling through what they want to buy, and they want to surprise, and then they get a gift alongside it. And I think that it varies. You can subscribe either for kind of 6 months or a year, or you can just subscribe on a month by month basis. But yeah, it's really interesting seeing the kind of variation amongst the accounts that I manage there. Some of them are children's only, some of them are adults, some of them are specifically kind of things like crime and thrillers. And that can be quite interesting to figure out which books I think fit where, depending on what we're publishing at a particular time.
Are these like online bookstores?
Kind of. Work a couple of online bookstores. I can, yeah. So Illumicrate is a really big one. Their work that they do is more aimed at kind of young adults or people who are really into young adult fiction. So they do a lot of work with young adult fantasy titles. That's predominantly what they sell, and they will do a really curated special edition of a book and then send that out in a box along with some items that might relate to the book or might relate to other books that are similar, and they're kind of really carefully curated and like really lovely, kind of gifty. I work with another customer called Chocolate and Book, where they will select a book and they will send it out to you with a couple of bars of chocolate every month, and they kind of, you can choose which genre you want them to send out.
And so people that buy these, would they buy them as gifts for someone else or for themselves?
I think it probably varies. I would guess that some people would, as I say, want to take the browsing time out of it. I mean, I've certainly felt uninspired at various points when deciding what book I want to read next, and thought maybe I'll just subscribe to one of these services and then they can choose for me and I'll read something which is new and surprising.
Yeah.
And I think also it makes a very nice gift. So probably a bit of both.
And so how much of your business does this subscription box take up?
So I probably can't speak to it as like a proportion of our wider business, because I don't know, apart from
No.
As a percentage of my time, I would say maybe 30% of my time is spent working with these people, because they're probably the longest list that I have. If I were to split all of my customers by area, the longest list of contacts that I would have would be subscription boxes. I probably manage about 30 accounts.
And so you and a colleague share the whole of the UK together?
So yeah, me and my manager, I guess, we work with people across the UK. It's less regional. So we do have a regional sales team, and each person in the team is responsible for a different area of the country, as it usually works. But I think, yeah, with special sales, it's more kind of customer based, and it's kind of a case by case basis. If we have a particular book that we think will sell well in, say, a pet shop that you mentioned, then we'll think, oh, okay, we should probably get in contact with this person.
So national accounts.
Yeah, so it depends less on the location and more on whether we think the book will sell there or not. So I guess we do in a sense represent the UK, but it's more based on whether the customers fit into special sales and whether we think we can sell into them than a region.
So yeah, you would, if it's a chain pet shop, you would just talk to the people at the head office and say, this is coming up, this would be a good fit with all your stores across the UK, right?
Yeah, we also work with wholesalers. So often, for example, I work with some Mind, Body, Spirit wholesalers, because we represent Inner Traditions and Rockpool, both of which publish Mind, Body and Spirit books and kind of card sets and that kind of thing. So I will sell those to wholesalers who will then go out and sell into smaller shops. But then sometimes also the smaller shops will contact me and want to buy from me directly. So it does vary.
So these wholesalers, that's like Ingram's and
Baker and Taylor are one of my manager's clients, but I'm not 100% sure about Ingram's. They might fall under the sales reps. I'm not sure that they're necessarily, although maybe. I haven't heard their names, so I don't know.
But that's the type of company you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a mind, body, spirit wholesaler called Holistic Trader. So I think Baker and Taylor are a little bit more general in what they purchase. But then you do have very kind of specific wholesalers who will specifically sell a certain thing. So Holistic Trader, I wouldn't be trying to sell them, our children's books necessarily. I would only be trying to sell them the mind, body, spirit books that fit into what they're selling. So I think there's a wholesaler called Magnet and Steel who sell into pet shops. So for example, if we did have a book that we wanted to get into pet shops, we would be pitching it to them to then distribute more widely.
And that wholesaler sells everything that a pet shop might want, right?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't work with them. That's my manager's remit. But yeah, it could be that they are a more general wholesaler. Certainly not always just books. No, there are certainly other wholesalers that we work with that sell books and other products.
Okay. Now, does Costco fit in your category?
Yes, it does fit into special sales. So I don't personally manage Costco, but my manager is responsible for pitching titles to Baker and Taylor to sell into Costco. And that will sometimes involve choosing specific titles that we know will work at a certain discount, because sometimes they'll need a higher discount and that kind of thing.
Yeah, typically they just go with bestsellers, don't they?
Often, yeah.
Okay. So let's just quickly go down the list and see if you've got any remarks about discount stores, warehouse clubs. That's Costco. Is there anything that you do especially for them?
I'm less on the high discount end of special sales. More what I do is manage the smaller accounts and the smaller businesses and that kind of thing. Bulk orders tend to be handled by my boss, because often they will involve print runs, which are quite complex to organize and make work, and you have to have certain quantities often to make it work. He manages that side of things because it's just easier for him to do it, because he can then authorize everything as he's doing it. And I will sometimes add on to a print run if I have, say, an order of 1,000 books from one of my customers, but I won't tend to run them myself necessarily. But yeah, my manager does work with the higher discount, so stores like The Works as well. He does some work with them.
Okay, and he does that because he has authorization to push the button on a larger print run. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, it can be more complicated than that, but because he works so closely with production on a regular basis, it makes more sense for him to manage the print runs than for me to do it, as I'm slightly newer to the field as well than he is. I mean, a lot newer. He's been doing what he does for years, so he just knows the processes really well. He works very closely with our production team. Yeah, that's more his remit than mine.
It's not print on demand, though.
No.
Is it? No, but it is like he will try and pull the order together and then get it so that it goes on the next run that you do, right? The next printing.
Or sometimes we'll do a specific run for a specific customer. So if, say, they want a certain number of copies of a certain book that we published a while ago that we don't have any plans to print again anytime soon, then we'll be able to get authorization to do another print run of that book specifically for that customer, which will often be an exclusive as well.
And what does that mean, exclusive? How does that manifest itself?
An exclusive, if we've offered someone an exclusive, it really should mean that we aren't doing it for anyone else. So if we've said, we'll print you 10,000 copies of this book, then we won't add in any other quantities for another person. Sometimes that can be a bit flexible. So they might initially say they want an exclusive, but then if we do end up needing to add in another quantity, they'll be okay with it. With my subscription boxes, exclusivity is very important because if I allow a book to go into 2 different boxes in the same month, then I'm ensuring that they're directly competing with each other, which is not what I want or what they want. I want to kind of make sure that my relationship with my customers is that I have their best interests when I'm selling something into them. So if I've offered someone an exclusive in a subscription box, I do tend to stick to that. And I know that there wouldn't necessarily be a lot of flexibility on that.
And then do they go and promote the book themselves and say you can only get it with us?
I mean, that wouldn't necessarily be the way that it would work. I think it's more a sense of they will often promote, which is very nice. I think that's a really lovely side of working with the subscription box, is that they tend to sometimes have quite big social media followings, and they will publicity for us without us having to ask them to very often. So I work with a customer who does giveaways and includes POS, so things like bookmarks and things like that. They will often include those in their boxes to promote other titles that we have that are coming out. I think it's more that we want to ensure that there's not going to be a clash. So if I have 2 middle grade children's subscription boxes, I don't want to put the same book in both in the same month, because they're just going to pull sales from each other, and it's not going to work well for either of them. So I just want to make sure if someone asks for a book that I've already put in another box, I will say, I'm sorry, I'm doing this for this person. I can't do it in the same month. Or I won't give away the customer's name, obviously, but I'll say I've already put it in a different subscription box, so I can't offer it to you.
So their customers will request specific titles then?
For some of them, you can do a quiz. So you'll do a quiz about your specific preferences, and they'll send you a book which is specific to those preferences. I think for the most part, they would rather not request a specific book. They would like to be surprised. So there's a kind of mystery element to it. It'll be kind of, you'll order a crime box and you'll get a selection of crime books that you wouldn't necessarily have picked up for yourself. And that's kind of the aspect of it that I think makes subscription boxes special.
And that makes up about 30% of your business, eh?
Yeah, my business personally, I would say 30%. I mean, it varies day to day, because obviously certain things take up your time on certain days. So, but I would say on the whole, I try and spend about a third of my time with those customers.
Right. We talked about airport stores. Anything special about them that requires any kind of special thinking, or?
I don't work with them. A colleague of mine works with WH Smith Travel, but I think at the moment, obviously, it's very sad because there's not a lot of footfall in airport. It's quite difficult to sell anything to them. I do know if they promote a book for us, it can result in a huge amount of sales. So it is quite an exciting thing if they really champion one of our titles, because often people, when going through an airport, it'll be a time where they're really wanting to buy a book. They're not necessarily just going to go and browse and then leave the shop without buying anything. I think if you're about to get on a plane and you're bored and you go into WH Smith bookstore, you're probably going to leave with something. So if they're promoting something for us, that's really great from a sales perspective.
Yeah, I'll just read this out. Typically, it's books on management, investment, economics, business biography, personal finance, and health. They all sell well to business travelers. Also, books for children tend to do well, especially activity books, popular fiction. Yeah, okay. So then we've got supermarkets and pharmacies. That also falls into your bailiwick, right?
Not supermarkets, no. So because those are such important accounts for us, we have people specifically assigned to those within our business. Because we want to be really making sure that we're pushing our titles to them. So that's not my area so much. If I were to describe it as 3 channels, I would say, because this is why I said when you asked if there was literature about it, it's quite difficult to quantify special sales properly. Sometimes people throw supermarkets in there as well. Sometimes people only talk about high discounts. But so supermarkets, and I would maybe count WH Smith in that channel as well, kind of more commercial. avenue.
Yeah.
And then there is bookshops, so independent bookshops and Waterstones and Foyles and that kind of place. That's the second channel. And then the third channel would be special sales, everything else. Pet shops, as you say, clothing stores. I work with organic toy stores for children that also sell books. Anywhere that you maybe wouldn't necessarily expect to see a book, but then when you're browsing, you see one. That would be the kind of place that I would work with, along with a lot of online only stores.
Yeah, like gift shops, Pottery Barn, these are American, I guess. Yankee Candle, Bath and Body Works, Pier 1, Hallmark stores, etc. Let's look at museums, zoos, and national parks. How about that?
Yeah, so museums are actually, we've recently reallocated those because we thought they worked better from a regional perspective. So our regional representatives now look after those, and they were until recently stores that we looked after. But yeah, I mean, there are some very interesting things to be done with museums, I think, because like they'll often be quite gifty, the kind of things that you're putting in there. We've had conversations around like, if we have a particular children's book coming up that we think would work, that we think is like very beautiful, that would fit into a museum shop, that kind of thing. It's a very interesting sales area, I think. I was sad when they were reallocated because I thought they would have been quite interesting to work with.
Well, you got to be tougher at the negotiating table.
Yeah, although to be fair, considering I already have about 50 accounts that I manage, I'm not sure I want to be taking on anymore.
Okay. So what about zoos? So that goes under museums.
I don't know where zoos sits, actually. Maybe I'll talk to my manager about it and see if we can start pitching to zoos.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely have a lot of books about animals that I'm sure would fit very well into a zoo gift shop. So maybe I'll say that's a new area. If we're not already selling into zoos, that's a new area that we should be looking at.
Okay. So wondering if we've covered the retailers.
Were you asking if there's any other retailers that I sell into that we haven't touched on?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's difficult for me to kind of quantify exactly, to kind of fit everything into a mold. There are lots of random things that I do that I feel should be important, but then escape me when I try and think about them. I've recently been selling one of our books to BBC History magazine. That's quite interesting. I do corporate event orders. That's quite a big part of what I do. So we have books that come out often that fit very well into a kind of corporate event. We have a book called Uncharted by Margaret Heffernan. I mean, it's not strictly a business book, but I think it can be very useful in business circumstances. It's about kind of facing uncertainty. So I work when people want to buy that, I'll work with them to make sure it's kind of arriving at the right time for the event, that kind of thing.
This is a corporate event, is it?
Yeah, so I'll work with businesses and I'll process orders for them of corporate books that we have. Also, as I've just remembered, so we were talking about zoos just now, I do sell books to wildlife trusts. So I recently sold some copies of a book to Cheshire Wildlife Trust. So I do work in that vein. I'd forgotten about that.
Okay, so how would that work then?
Yeah, often the way that I will end up with a customer is they will approach me about a particular book that we publish. In this case, we publish a book called Rewild Yourself, which has been very popular amongst various wildlife trusts. So I've had people, I think I had one person from one particular wildlife trust approach me, and then they were in contact with someone else who also approached me to buy the same title. And then I will kind of remember those people whenever we have a book that is coming up that I think would be good for them. And then that kind of, I guess, builds momentum, and I end up having them as a customer and as a regular contact. But often it will be that it will be people coming to me with a request for a particular book, and because it doesn't fit into trade sales, it will end up in special sales, which is how I end up doing so many kind of random things.
That sounds pretty easy. You just sit there and wait for the telephone to ring?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds it when you describe it like that. There have been days that I've been tearing my
Well,
hair.
I'm surprised that, yeah, I guess I'm surprised that you don't call up all the different, wildlife trusts out there.
Maybe I should be doing that.
Or do you not?
I think there's a balance, right? Because particularly if you're pitching a book to someone that wouldn't necessarily always sell books, you're both convincing them to buy your product and to sell a product that they wouldn't necessarily always want to sell. And I think that's an area that I definitely need to grow into and learn a bit more, is being a bit more proactive.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment we're in the lead up to Christmas, so I'm being very reactive because I'm getting a lot of queries on a daily basis. People are really trying to stock up. So I haven't had so much time to sit down and think, but definitely thinking about strategy for next year. One of the things that I want to think about is trying to take on new accounts, trying to think about new areas. I've been speaking to my manager about contacting garden centers and that kind of place and seeing whether there are wholesalers that want to buy our books and sell them there. I mean, one of my colleagues is very good at that. She'll send me things sometimes. She'll say like, oh, I've seen this cafe, which is a Hansel and Gretel dessert cafe, and I think that they would like this book. Why don't you go and pitch it to them? That kind of thing. And I wanna do a bit more of that, grow into the role a bit more.
No one likes to do cold calling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that aspect of it so much. I quite like the relationship element of sales. I like being able to build and maintain relationships with people. I would say I do more cold emailing than cold calling. So that's fine, it feels less like you're annoying someone, I think, if you send them an email rather than call them on the phone.
Yeah, that's the difference, I think, but in our age difference showing, because I used to do cold calls and they're brutal because you have to get used to getting rejected, not face to face, but ear to ear. Whereas email, not so bad.
Yeah, that's true. I've not had any bad experiences really yet. The people that I've spoken to on the phone have mostly been people who've already shown interest in buying our books. So that makes my job quite easy. And if I send them an email, they might just not respond. And then I might chase them and then they might just not respond again. So I think it's less brutal than having someone actively reject you on the phone.
Yeah, now so with non-retail sales, which is what we've drifted into, there are corporations, associations, foundations, government agencies, and the armed services. Buyers want to use the information in your books to help them to solve a business problem. They use your content as a tool to increase their sales, introduce new products, educate, motivate. Can you get a bit more specific with that wildlife trust? What specifically was the book and what do they then do with it? Do you ship it to them and then they try and sell it to their members? Is that how it works?
The specific book was Rewild Yourself, which is a book about rediscovering the joys of nature, which I think is very topical at the moment because I think a lot of people are realizing that when we all have to stay at home, being in an apartment in a city, as I myself am right now, is not always the best place to be. I mean, my understanding is that when the Wildlife Trust purchased these books, they probably have some sort of a gift shop associated with it. But it might well be that they're sending them out. I'm such a salesperson that I kind of sell the books and then I'm not really thinking too much about where they go. I'm like, cool, I've done my sale. That's fine. That goes into our budget. Don't worry about it.
That's right. Just as long as you got the sale, you're happy. Yeah. But you know what might be useful is, as you say, if they've got a shop, that's fine. But maybe someone else in the same organization is responsible for some kind of direct mail and you could sell more. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, watch me on Monday. I'm going to go and call up every wildlife trust in the country and pitch this book to them. But I think what I've seen just from the couple that I've worked with is that it's been kind of a word spreading kind of thing, that someone has spoken to someone and said, I've purchased this book from this person, and then they've passed on my contact details, which again, it's nice, they're doing my job for me. But yeah, it's I think you're right in that understanding where a book is being sold and how exactly it's being sold is very important, and I think is an aspect of my job that I have lost a little bit being in a pandemic, because the nice thing about doing what we do is being able to get out and see people and visit customers and show them the physical book and say, I think this would work well in your store, and also to be able to go out on research trips and go into anthropology and see what they're selling at the moment, what kinds of books they have on their shelves, what we have in our list that I think would fit them well. And I think that's been a bit sad for me not to have that experience of my role yet. Hopefully when there's a vaccine, I will be able to do that. But yeah, at the moment it is very kind of online based, and looks like it will be for the foreseeable future. So a lot of it is guesswork.
One of the neat things is basically you've got different sales pitches you could make. Each book has a great story, and it's designed to appeal to someone, right? And typically there's an association or a company or some organization that would connect with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I like most about what I do is the wide variety of accounts and of books that I work with. In a typical day, I can go from pitching some really beautiful curated poetry books to Urban Outfitters to pitching the latest crime thriller to one of my subscription boxes, to pitching a really beautiful children's picture book, to an online store that sells children's toys and that kind of thing. I really like the wide variety. I really like sitting down and really thinking, what does this customer want? What do they already sell? What can I see on their website? What do we have that will fit with that? And I mean, I'm lucky enough to work with a massive list because we have the titles that we publish, which is a substantial list, and we do put out quite a lot of books, but then also all of our client titles. So, if we don't have something, I'm sure that many of the other publishers whose books I'm privileged to be able to sell will do as well. So that's a really nice aspect of it. I mean, it does involve holding a lot of books in my head at once.
Yes.
I'm getting better at doing stuff on the fly, but I would like to be able to just, if someone asks me for a recommendation, just pull one off the top of my head.
So are you instructed to try and sell your own books first? Did you make more of a profit off them?
Our client business is very important to us. It's a huge part of what we do as a sales team. I would say that I pitch everything equally. I put everything together. I'll split it up sometimes by publisher, but really for me, the most important thing is getting a good fit. What is the best book for what this person wants? Sometimes I'll have someone say, do you have a book of this kind coming out? What would you recommend for the next 6 months or so? And I will just really sit down and think about everything that we have to offer, and I'll pull things out. And I would say, it's probably about 50-50 that it's one of our books or one of our client books. So, and I mean, for things like for customers that I have, like Tokyo Toys, the store I mentioned, they do exclusively buy Viz Media and manga. So for that, I'm not going to be pitching, I'm not going to be saying, we've got this great novel coming out, because it's just not going to be right for them. What is right for, various accounts really varies across all of our lists. So.
What about schools?
Schools. So I have actually done a couple of things with schools. Not schools specifically, but I work with a children's school supplier, and I did sold some books to the Books Council of Wales. So they did a scheme where they wanted to get this particular title that they'd chosen of ours. They wanted to send it out to schools across Wales. So they chose this book. They contacted me about the order. We came to an agreement about a discount, and then I sold them these books. And that was a really lovely thing that I did. It was a charity that that I was selling books to, and I knew these books were going to go to all these kids across Wales. That was really exciting for me. Those are things that I really like. They'll often come to us through our inquiries channel. So we have a sales inquiries channel where people can make inquiries. I think that the inquiries email is up on our website. And if something fits into my remit, it will be sent to me. And I'm always really pleased when things like that are sent to me, because I think that they're really lovely. I really enjoy working with those people.
So now you can call up all sorts of school boards all across the country now too, right?
I think things like that tend to be a bit more centralized to either a charity or a, school supplier, that kind of thing. Often I think schools and libraries will go through wholesalers, and that tends to be more in the remit of my colleagues selling into those wholesalers than me. But yeah, it is always nice to find a new area that fits under what I do, particularly something that's specifically targeted to, helping children access reading. I think that's really nice.
So you don't produce textbooks then? That'd be another company that specializes in that, and that school boards would order from. You're not into that.
So I don't specifically sell these to my customers, because I don't really have any customers who they would work for, but we do work with publishers whose names escape me, but they do publish, they publish kind of SAT prep books and that kind of thing. So that is on our client list. We do have a lot of educational books on our list, but I would say that apart from those, that's not so much our focus. Although we do like to do accessible books in our children's department. I know we're doing some books that are dyslexia friendly and that kind of thing. So those will lend themselves, I think, well to being sold into schools, but aren't specifically educational.
What about cinemas that you have these tie-in books with, like the movie and the book are tied together with the similar cover, let's say. Do you ever get into that?
We do actually have a fair few tie-ins, because we have books that come to us from our US list that are called distributed titles. So they will be published by Simon & Schuster in the US, and then they will give us the right to sell them in the UK. And we have a fair few film tie-ins that come from those, because they publish kind of young adult books, like 5 Feet Apart, that one that came out a couple of years ago that was like a big film. I think it had Cole Sprouse in it. I think that was his name. Cole or Dylan, one of the two. But it was a big teen film, basically, and I think we did a film tie-in for that. And they're often quite popular here, but I'm not sure that we have thought about selling into cinemas. Maybe, you're doing my job for me here. You're giving me ideas of places that I should be selling books that I'm not at the moment. I can slap myself on the wrist. I'm not doing well enough.
Well, it's funny. I don't think I've ever seen a book for sale at a cinema, but you never know. It makes sense though, doesn't it?
Yeah, for all the people that come out of it and their friends are saying, the book is better, then they can just go and buy the book.
Exactly. What about government?
I haven't personally sold anything to the government. Probably would sit under special sales if they suddenly were interested in buying one of our books. That might be something that I would give to my manager rather than handling it myself.
Okay.
I would imagine it would be just an ordinary sale. They give me their invoicing details. I raise an invoice. We charge them for the books. We send them the books. They do what they will with them. If the government agency were to be interested, then that would be how it would work.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about getting out into nature. That's a pretty good message for whatever government department handles health. Maybe it's that could be a sale there.
Oh, maybe. I need to speak to my friends who work for the civil service and get them to start pitching our books to them.
Okay, now what about finally military? That's a huge potential market, I would think. During the war, I know Penguin Books, they sold to the armed forces during the war. There are a couple of titles. I think it's called in America, it's called The Practical Cogitator. And it was just a bunch of interesting short items packed into a book. And that went out to their soldiers. You don't sell to the military then?
I haven't yet. Never say never.
They've got video games and videos, but still, I mean, some of them want to read a book.
Yeah, I don't know where you would even start with that. Because sales is such a contacts-based business. Who would you contact in the military?
Yeah, well, I would start with the 5-star general.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly I inherited a list of contacts when I came into this role, and I couldn't see any for the military on there, I have to say. I think that would be more probably a case of if we had a book which really worked for them and they wanted it, they would probably come to us rather than the other way around. But maybe there's a big untapped market there. I'll speak to my manager about it on Monday and say, why aren't we selling into the military? Where are your military contacts?
Okay. So anything else that we need to say here?
I mean, I would just say what I would want to say if anyone is thinking about going into special sales is that it sometimes gets a bad rep, which is very frustrating because it is such a big and I think important area of the business. I think that externally, because it can sometimes be high discount, the view of it is, just like churning out books to whoever. And that's really, not the case. It's not what we do. It's not what me and my manager do. We do sell high discount sometimes, but on the whole, I would say that, my view of special sales is that it's about, as we've talked about in the course of this conversation, finding areas that are previously untapped, and that you wouldn't necessarily expect of the book market, where you can sell your books, where you might have a particular book that fits really well into a particular theme, like Rewild Yourself for the Wildlife Trust, or one of our history books for BBC History Magazine, or one of our poetry books for Urban Outfitters. And it's about getting those titles out there, I think, and getting them out to the audiences that are going to buy them. And that's not to say that bookshops don't do that as well, but I think the people that we reach aren't necessarily the people that always buy books as well, which is quite nice. They might be people who are just kind of browsing a gift shop, or they've gone into Anthropology to buy a new dress and they see a really nice cookbook on the shelf and they think, oh, I'm going to buy that as a gift, or I'm going to buy that for myself. And I think that's nice. As I said, circling back around early on, I was talking about how much I love how accessible reading can be and how it can give you windows into so many different things and it can reach so many people. I think that what I do is nice in that respect because it is about reaching people ultimately. And it's about, someone's in a pet store and they're buying food for their dog and they see one of our books and they buy that. I think that's a very cool aspect. So don't write it off is basically what I'm saying. Don't write it off as just, high discount, all the areas that are kind of like not mainstream. It is that, and it is sometimes high discount, but it's also a lot more than that, I think.
So you don't feel like you're competing with the bookstores then?
No, I think it's just something else. For example, I've spoken about Tokyo Toys. If someone is really into manga, they're probably not going to go to Waterstones. So it's catering for them. And the type of poetry book that I sell to Urban Outfitters, sometimes they will work well in a more traditional bookshop setting, but sometimes it will be more specific to, Urban Outfitters. Sometimes it will sell a lot better there than it would elsewhere. And I think that's more how I feel it is, that it's not direct competition. It's just a different area.
Well, the other thing too that's really, I think, exciting is that each book is unique. There is no competition for it. It's the only one of its kind. You don't have any competition.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think working in the gift market particularly, there are a lot of our books that are very unique and might not find a home elsewhere. They're really amazing, unique books, and they're about such a wide variety of different things. Some of them are really beautiful and really lovely to own, and they might not sell well in other places. So we're giving them a home, we're giving them a place to be sold by selling them into these particular customers. That's really nice. I mean, certainly it's been really eye-opening for me working with the Mind, Body, Spirit books that Inner Traditions and Rockpool published, because that's not an area of publishing I knew about at all. And there is such a market for them, but it's a very specific market, and it's very specific people who buy them. And that is its own thing. Some of the titles are more commercially transferable across various other areas of the market, but some of them are just very specific to the audience that they're trying to reach. And by selling them into those particular people, you're helping them reach that audience.
Well, there's no shortages of ways to get that big brain of yours working here then.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could spend more time thinking. I mean, it's been really interesting actually talking to you, because I do always regret that I don't have enough time during my working day to sit and think about all the other people I could be pitching to. At the moment, my focus is on maintaining my current customer base and maintaining good relationships with those people. But it's really interesting thinking about all the areas we could be expanding into. And I think definitely in the new year, my manager and I are really thinking about all the new places that we can start to reach out to, and all the new places that we can start to expand our market into. And it's quite exciting in that way.
Okay, well, and business is good even during COVID. I've been reading, for publishers anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've done very well this year. I think we've had a really good year. We've had a few really big books that have sold incredibly well, and most of them were about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But we've done really well with a lot of our other titles as well. And it's been a really exciting year, I think. It's been a great year to be a part of this company. I've been very grateful to be a part of a company that's doing so well, even in the midst of a very difficult time for retail. And I think, I'm just excited to see what happens next year. I think we're gearing up to try and have an even better year next year. So,
well, allow me to wish you the best of luck next year and in future years in your career with books. And maybe we can check in. Let's check in a year or two to see where you are.
That would be great. Yeah, it's been really nice chatting to you. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Bianca Gillam is a special sales assistant with Simon & Schuster UK. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.